Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Linda LaFlamme, and this is our first guest speaker for the Winnipesaukee Historical Society. We're going to be having different guest speakers every Saturday, but we are introducing this week Mr. Fred Golembewski, and he's going to give a talk on the early days of Mount Washington.
Okay. Thank you so much. Well, I just give a little background about myself. We've been coming up here probably about 38, 39 years off and on. We have a camp at Lakeshore Park, and it's it's kind of enjoyable. I don't know how you guys are, but it's just a nice area, and we've spoken to several people, and they say the same thing. I've known several individuals. They said they've been around the world, and this is by far the best place, and I kind of believe that, in terms of the entire area. But enough of that. Anyway, I didn't expect that I was going to give a full presentation. I was up here for 2 weeks, and I just had to have some items, and I was asked, and I said, sure, I'm very happy to give you a talk on the Mount. I'll call it the Mount. The Mount was the first ship, the paddle wheel steamer that some of you are probably familiar with. You're looking at a display over here. Built in 1872, plied the lake. I'll preface it by saying that going back into the beginning of the 1800s, transportation was primarily by railroad. One part of the lake, the Oakland Bay area, was serviced by the Chico Railroad. This side of the lake was serviced by the Concord Montreal Railroad, and the Boston Maine was here and there. Eventually, the Boston and Maine Railroad bought everyone out, but basically, at the beginning, at the middle of the century, middle of 1800s, you had a natural feud between railroads, and because when the trains stopped, the natural progression would be, okay, I stopped at Golden Bay. Where do I go from here? Well, you have to get to Wolfboro, so you have to get to Weirs, or if they're coming down from Montreal, you have to go to Portsmouth. So how to get there? The roads were not that great. So naturally, the train, the B&M and not B&M, but the Chico and the Concord Railroads would say, geez, let's get on this act and make a natural continuation of building steamers which would carry the passengers. And it was a pretty nice thing for them to do because it worked out very well. My readings, it showed that they had quite a good profit on that aspect of it. And there's a lot of history on different steamers, but I'll start with my primary interest was the Mount Washington, which was built in Oakland Bay in 1872. Okay, it's a paddle wheel steamer. The measurements, I think it was about 178 feet long, roughly 45 feet wide. A depth of being about 6 feet, depending on who you read. One of the books says that it's 12 feet, but it was a misprint, and it's about 6.5 feet. Carried about approximately 600 passengers. Now you say, well, that's pretty good, but the type of engine it had at the time was unusual, very large piston, 10 feet long, 3.5 feet wide, and the engine itself took the whole lower level and took about a third of the upper level, so it's kind of interesting. The engine itself, if you visualize the boat, the engine was like this, and so it took quite a bit of the boat. I'm going to just add to this. I primarily made my presentation for nursing homes, where I pass out items, and I may do the same thing here. But if you have any questions as I'm talking, just feel free to raise your hand. I'll be very happy to try to answer it if I can, and if not, try to push you in the direction of someone else who might. Anyway, so here we are, 1872, and the Mount Washington is now plying the waters, and boom, guess what? It's fairly successful. Okay, and there was another boat at the time, Lady of the Lake. I don't know if any of you have heard of it. Raise your hand if you've heard of it. Okay, that was the competitor. All right, and back in those days, Lake Winnipesaukee is spelled the way it is today, but back in those days, one competitor named it Winnipesaukee with the G-E-E. Some of you may know what I'm talking about, and the other competitor named it the word that we have, the way we have the spelling now. And you may or may not be aware of the Lake Winnipesaukee spelling is about 120, 30 different ways, and if you ever go on the internet, if you interested in that, just Google it, and you'll get a list, and they'll be adding more and more. And I myself have seen 7 or 8 on different maps, and you might even see 7 or 8 in this particular room as you look around. The primary route was Weirs Beach, Center Harbor, Wolfboro, Halton Bay. And since we're talking about a ship that started in 1872 and went through 1939, obviously it didn't stay at those 5 different spots. You have to take into consideration that the people of the time went on vacation. Now, you and I go on vacation and we'll pack a suitcase, but in those days, they went on vacation. But you and I to go to a foreign country was like people in Massachusetts coming up here. That's what it was like, because you had to pack your large, I don't know what they call those things. They asked me what that word was. Steamer trunks. And you kind of wonder, why do they call them steamer trunks? Well, obviously, if I can find it, there are a couple of pictures, but I don't know if you can see it. But this kind of gives you a flavoring of what it was like. I mean, you think this boat was packed, and I've yet to see a picture of the early mount, the one we're talking, I'll call it quote mount, the early mount, ending in 1939, that has never been packed. It's just loaded and loaded with people. And I'll just kind of pass around. You can look at it as we're talking on that. As the years went on, the mount itself not only went from port to port, the ports that I just mentioned, but would also stop at different islands. It would stop at Long Island, which was one of the major islands that it would stop at, and that was a main stop at one block of time over the many years that the mount was in operation. It also stopped at Diamond Island. Diamond Island, some of you probably might even know people who were there at Diamond Island. And they had, at Diamond Island, they had a hotel there, which is called Hotel Weirs, and I guess when it fell into lack of use, I guess it was moved over to the shore at the Weirs and attached or added on to the hotel there, which was again called Hotel Weirs. Now, I don't know if the person that owned the Hotel Weirs on Diamond Island was the same person that owned the Hotel Weirs at Weirs, with the same individual, but that's my reading on it. And from my understanding, the Diamond Island was a very, I guess, an attractive resort in the summertime. It had a bowling alley, and it had a large hotel. And a few of my readings, and it's interesting, when you read, you get little glimpses. They had a little supposedly slot machine in the area. I don't know how that was illegal, but I'm just telling you little tidbits of information, and I'm certain some of you probably might even add to what I've been able to glean from my readings on it. It did also stop at Lakeshore Park, and in my readings for a period of time, you're trying to figure out, I said, no, the fountain did not stop at Lakeshore Park. And sure enough, one of the books that I read, and I think it was Gunstock Parish or Guildford Parish, I don't remember what very big book is. Some of you might know what I'm talking about. It's a very large book. And it did make reference that the mount did stop at Lakeshore Park, but the sandbar just floated in. I don't know how the erosion works, but the sand came in and they didn't have the capacity to dredge out anymore, so that stopped that vessel, because again, it was a very large vessel. Steamboats did stop religiously at Lakeshore Park, the smaller steamboats, but the mount being so large just did not have, it had so much of a draft that it could not stay there. It was very, very successful, very successful. Time progresses on, the turn of the century comes, World War I comes, transportation now becomes very prevalent. Automobiles are being developed now. So instead of traveling by train and by boat now, people are now traveling by car. After the end of World War I, it appears that automobile transportation was the mode that people went by. Several of the railroads merged together, the Boston Main being the one I would quote, bought out various railroads, purchased the Cochico Railroad, which ran from Portsmouth up into Halton Bay, purchased the Boston, on the other side of the lake, the Concord-Montreal Railroad. They purchased the Lakeshore Railroad. Some of you might be familiar with that railroad that ran along the lake, was it Route 11, I guess it is? So anyway, in about the 20s, it divested itself of the railroad company, B&M, divested itself of all its holdings that were non-railroad, and that included trolleys and steamboats. And so off went the Mount Washington.